Don't tell anybody. Good morning. Welcome to you from the heart of the country. From Arkansas, from Minnesota, from Michigan. Like, I'm a good person. Hey, happy Tuesday, fellas. And Dan, special happy primary Tuesday to you. We can talk about that later.
Pretty exciting day.
Yeah, primary day. Hey, in Minneapolis, where I am, the forecast says sunny, 44 degrees, and a chance for snow, which we've only had one time this winter. Chance for snow. So somehow it's going to be 44.
It's almost snowing. 60 degrees here in Michigan, and I've got the windows open. It's beautiful.
Lovely.
Here in Arkansas, it's going to hit 80 today in February.
Don't love that.
Nope. It's almost as if the climate is changing.
But is it that comfortable 80, like the no humidity 80, the
yes.
dry
it's really
80?
Nice.
That's
really
nice.
Pretty.
You can barely sweat.
It's windy, though. It's windy.
It's a windy 80.
Yeah. Good day for a bike ride, then.
So it's not a great day to sit outside and smoke a cigar.
There you go.
Because of the wind.
You ever smoke a cigar while riding a bike? Is that a thing people do?
I don't think that's a thing.
Chugging along like a choo-choo train.
I literally don't think I've ever seen someone with a cigar in their mouth on Facebook. I feel like that could be a thing.
Yeah.
If we were to start a band called "I'm Not a Robot," based on Dan's earlier gripings about having to get this thing online, that could be the album cover. Robb with like a derby hat on an old timey bike.
There we go.
It's just great. It's just great imagery. Hey, welcome to the Common Good Podcast. We're going to talk about many important things having to do with our political life that we're all living in and experiencing here. But let me just say, yesterday I had a procedure on my eyelid. Now, some people might be thinking to themselves, "Oh, he finally took care of that droopy eyelid that he has." Because I feel like I do have a droopy eyelid over here. I didn't. I went in because I had a little eye issue, like my eye was hurting. I went to the doctor, and then he goes, "Hey, what's that thing on your eyelid over there?" I was like, "I don't know." He goes, "How long have you had it?" And these are questions doctors ask all the time. You come in with a symptom, and they start, properly quizzing you about how long has it changed. I have no idea how long I've had that little thing on my, and it makes me just feel like somehow I'm not at all paying attention to what other people are paying attention to. I'm like, do people know this stuff? If you have a little, I don't know, some quirky thing somewhere, and then they say, well, has it changed at all recently? I literally don't know. So then he said, I think we should take that off and send it in. And I love the guy because then he just literally, without missing a beat, I think we should send it in because worst case scenario, cancer. That's what he said. Worst case scenario, cancer.
I visited. Yeah,
eyelid cancer. If I get eyelid cancer, I don't even know. I don't even know what what ribbon color that is. I mean, maybe it's a subset of skin cancer. I don't even know. Colored. But right now I'm waiting for the results to come back on my eyelid thing, which maybe someone's going to say, oh no, look, that's a melanoma if it's on your eyelid and a really big deal and you shouldn't fuss with that and don't make jokes about it. But right now I'm in that's hilarious, something on my eyelid. I have no idea when it got there, what's happened to it. And he said, I think we should take it off, worst case scenario.
Yeah, it's a better coping mechanism than Googling it. So,
never Google a thing. No. Yeah, I visited the dermatologist last week to just have all my weird little spots checked out, and he said, "Okay, well, what about this one?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, that's she called it a wisdom spot." I'm like, "Okay, well, what about this one down on my leg?" And she's like, "Oh no, that's I don't know." And she's like, "How long have you had that?" And I'm like, "I don't know, 20 years." 15 years? I don't know. It's been here a long time. Has it changed? Yes. Oh, I don't know. I haven't. Yeah. So I got all my spots checked out, and she said all of these are normal. So come back in a couple of years. Like,
Wow.
okay.
Great.
So
Hey,
Congratulations.
no weird
Yes.
spots.
no weird. I mean, I have weird spots, but none of them are cancerous. So that was good. Yeah, it was a
That's
big
a win.
medical week. I hate to admit this. Went to the dentist last week.
Okay.
Went to the dentist last week, probably the first time in 10 years. And
Yes.
yeah. So just a couple of cavities. Not
Okay.
too bad.
How did they feel your flossing regiment? Were they
Did they
happy
shame
with
you?
No. I actually Googled
Shame-free
looking
dentists.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yep. I did, and I picked one that was on the list. Yeah, but I mean, I do have a broken tooth that. So the next time I go here in a couple of weeks, gonna have that extracted and put a cadaver bone in there to make space for
what?
Yeah, do you know that's what they use? Is they use cadaver bones? Like
No.
that bothers you?
For some reason, it does. Like if it's a beating heart from a organ donor, yeah, great. But just some bones, I don't know. That weirds me out.
Yeah, they gotta put it in there as a spacer, so that before they put the implant in, so your teeth don't grow together. So, anyways.
Oh yeah, dude, I had teeth taken out. I mean, this has just become a true old man podcast.
Yeah, this is. Hey, tell me about your spots.
I had some teeth taken out in my 30s, and I'm still struggling with that very, very bad decision. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
speaking of bad decisions, we've got a lot of stories to get into. Did you want to segue into a particular one, Rob?
Well, I was going to let the listeners know what I was dealing with last week that maybe had me in an emotional state, so much so that I would argue about Jon Stewart on this podcast. Yeah. So last week,
die on that hill.
Yes, absolutely. Last week, someone shot our cat, which is just. We have an indoor-outdoor cat. We have two of them, actually, sisters, and one of them, Puppy.
The cat named Puppy.
I try to be sensitive to this whole story, but every time you call it indoor-outdoor cat, I think indoor-outdoor carpet, and then you call it Puppy. You named your cat Puppy.
Well, I did not name our cat Puppy. My children named our cat Puppy. So Puppy was shot. The
with
bullet
a
was
gun. Yeah, with bullets,
with
not like a pellet gun.
Not a BB gun. Shot. Bullet lodged in her shoulder. Shattered a bit. Broke her leg, and she has since had a rod put in her leg. Most of the bullet fragments removed, but not all of them. She, a quarter of her body is shaved, and she's rocking a crazy weird haircut. She can't go through a metal detector any longer, and she now lives in our bathroom until she heals up. But it was a crazy week, and then and on top of it, now I have to wonder which of my neighbors is a crazy person who would shoot a cat in the middle of the day.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, or any time of the day. Yeah, including like even if it was late evening after a day of day drinking in Arkansas.
And I mean, I don't live in the country. I don't live out in the country where
it's a little neighborhood.
A cat's like getting into your chicken coop or something. You fire at it. I kind of understand that. I live in a neighborhood.
It's a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, seriously.
Do any of your neighbors have chickens? Because I would start there if there were chickens.
No, because we live in Springdale, Arkansas, that is owned and operated by Tyson. Springdale is one of the few towns in Arkansas that it is illegal to own chickens within city limits.
Because of Big Chicken. The lobby doesn't want you to have your own chickens.
Yeah, Big Chicken controls our city council.
Because they don't want people having chickens as pets and therefore having a soft spot in their heart for chickens because they make their money off of processing chickens into protein solutions.
Yeah, yes, and I think the reason they would give is that um, when people are taking care of chickens in their backyards and whatnot, there's a higher likelihood of chicken diseases, and they don't
Oh,
want they because there's so many chickens that are raised in our area and processed. Um, they want to lower the risk of chicken disease,
huh.
Yeah,
but I think it's they just don't want the competition.
yep.
The competition for
Yeah.
eggs, you mean?
Yeah, no, not eggs. I mean the protein. If I'm raising my own chickens, what do I need Tyson for?
Well, most people who raise chicken
Do it for eggs.
don't
I know.
don't
It's
eat.
crazy.
That'd be the most expensive chicken dinner you've had in a very long time. You're buying chick and
Tasty
raising
though.
it in the backyard and building a coop, and then you can just slide it. Yeah, well,
Now,
but
listen,
whatever.
even the eggs, because I had chickens for several years, most expensive eggs I've ever eaten. Because you get the coop, you got the feed, then a fox eats half your chickens, you got to get more chickens. It doesn't balance out ever, but it's the experience. So
You can just move.
can't
Right,
put a
it's-
price on that.
Yeah, that's that. And a lot of people I know who raise chickens, including our
Actually,
neighbors,
Turns out there's a exact price on it, and it's
exact dollar per egg. People I know who raise chickens, they don't really treat them as pets, but they do treat them as a thing they're caring for, and so that just makes me think that's kind of what they're up to over there. Hey, Kimberly Johnson is in the chat. Says good morning from Minnesota. I had the privilege of meeting Kimberly at the God and Country
Ah,
on Sunday.
didn't
So
show up.
Kimberly, so great to see you. Oh yeah. We scrubbed your comment and just put up the picture.
No, it's still not just a picture,
Just
but it
just a
does
picture.
say good morning from Minnesota.
It was great to see Kimberly and a bunch of others. Dan and I were in Michigan for a showing of God and Country over the weekend. Great to see the good folks of Holland. And then in Minnesota on Sunday, where there was a huge turnout at this big theater. We have a couple of these old theaters from old-timey theaters where they like seat 700 people, and there's just
wow.
a ramp up of it's old school stadium seating, not
Mm-hmm.
the new fancy kind, but like it just peaks up like you're in a stadium. 600 people in that theater watching that film.
No way.
God and Country.
That's great.
It was raucous, and a whole lot going on. And a couple of people I know who saw it, who are one person who saw the film, and then at the end said to someone else who I know very well, I think I'm a Christian nationalist. No, I think I'm more on the nationalist side of things. I didn't know what it was called, but I think that's where I am. So they saw a film critiquing Christian nationalism and showing excerpts and clips of Christian nationalists saying things, and then said at the end of it, "Yeah, I think that's how
I'm into that.
I see things." So I'll just say maybe the film, is available for everyone. Didn't know the thoughts you had, but now we do. So now you have a name for them that is in the film clearly presented as a threat to democracy, and they're like, "Yeah, I think I'm more that way. I think I'm more on that side of things." So if you have a chance to see it in theaters in the next couple of weeks, great. And it's going to be out on streaming. And if you're in the Vote Common Good universe, we will let you know about it when it's available in those kinds of platforms. But Dan, Michigan was great, but there's more happening in Michigan than just a showing of the film.
Yeah.
Old, Nikki Haley, who's chosen now to become a Trump slayer a little late in the game after she was clear that she wasn't going to win or be seeking Trump's voters at any point, has come out swinging. And there was a big primary today for both the Democratic process of selecting the next nominee and the Republicans. And the little article said there's 4 things to watch, 2 things on the Republican side and 2 things on the Democratic side. The Democratic side, one of the big questions is, can surrogates turn out the vote in a primary time, because there's really nothing to be voting for? It's a bit of a foregone conclusion. The other is, will people who are opposed to the way the Biden administration has dealt with the Nation of Israel's attack on Gaza, will those people choose to express their views by not voting for Joe Biden in this primary and use this as a real statement about those opinions? And so, not just Arab Americans in Michigan, but certainly that population where there's more than 200,000 people who would identify as Arab Americans that vote in Michigan. Big number. And a lot of concern that Biden's administration's reaction and response to what Israel has been doing in its military actions against Palestinian people in Gaza and Hamas has turned those people away from being willing to publicly support Biden at this point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much traction this gets, this whole Listen to Michigan campaign that's trying to get 10,000 people to vote uncommitted instead of voting for Biden in the primary, just to send a message. It doesn't mean they're not going to vote for Biden in the general election, obviously, but it's trying to use what mechanisms are in place to say, hey, we're not thrilled about this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, primaries can serve more than the purpose of just picking the candidate, right? They can be a chance for the party to express itself in ways that there aren't very many ways for someone to express themselves in the in the political system, really, right? Like you don't really have that many chances. Voting is a very simple task that has one particular outcome. You vote for this person or you don't, and that's it. You don't get to write in comments. There's not no one's scanning through the additional thoughts about what went on with your vote. So people have to interpret that by all kinds of other means. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, we had the Republican primary in South Carolina over the weekend that Donald Trump won handily, but only came in with 60% of the vote. There's been all this talk about how divided Democrats are, and at the same time, Joe Biden in a primary that's a foregone conclusion is pulling in 90% of the vote, north of 90% of the vote. In a Republican primary that is a foregone conclusion, Donald Trump's only pulling in 60% of the vote. And that's a super interesting trend to watch if, see how that continues as he inches closer to securing the Republican nomination. The other interesting thing is that it's like 60% of Nikki Haley voters are saying that they will not vote for Donald Trump in the general election. Donald Trump has a real problem, in the Republican primary, and we could talk about and we have talked about the problem that Joe Biden has with voters who are not happy with some of his policies, some of his decisions, maybe what's seen as some of his inaction with the Israel Gaza situation. And yeah, Joe Biden's got a problem. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to see the age situation, the mental capacity situation, the problem within their own party situation. It feels to me like in each of these, Joe Biden has a molehill problem and Donald Trump has a mountain problem. But it feels like they are portrayed in the media the exact opposite.
Right. It's like Trump's facing 91 counts of felony wrongdoing. He's just as old as Biden. He's got all this baggage, and on the flip side, people are like, yeah, but Biden's pretty old. So
yeah, I mean, the classified documents thing. It's like they are bizarro versions of each other.
Yep.
And but one is like crazy out of control, but it feels like the narratives are the exact opposite of what reality is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the amount of hand wringing that there is about whether Biden can win this election from Democrats is unparalleled in my paying attention to politics, at least.
Yeah.
And I understand why, because the threat is so high, and because there's still such deep memory of 2016 when there was no way Donald Trump was going to win.
Yep.
And then he did. So that is so baked in with the other tendency inside of Democratic talking circles, which is that somehow, Republicans will pull this thing off and steal the election anyway, right? That's stealing elections language is rife within the entire world. No one has funded it to the level of criminality like the Trump people, but that's sort of around. And I think you're exactly right, Rob, that this is that if you can pull back emotionally and just talk about behavior of people when they go into voting booths and what they're going to do, the idea that you would say to Joe Biden, I know there's a lot of people saying this. I just listened to a podcast by Ezra Klein, who many people who listen to this might also know. And if not, you might very much enjoy Ezra Klein on some things. But he has this podcast out, which is basically begging Biden to step aside, begging all the people in the system who has some influence on him to step aside, because he is convinced that he can't win, and because of polling and some of the rest of this. And then to have a brokered convention and build a whole bunch of excitement in August at the convention. And I think he's just absolutely wrong about what would happen if there was a brokered convention. I mean, we may end up with a brokered convention because of some things, but to want it and desire it and push for it and think it's the solution would be really a problem. You'd have so much infighting, and you'd have so much bad blood starting up in August. There's no time to recover before November. But anyway, all of this hand wringing that's going on about this, I totally get it, because the costs really are high. If Donald Trump does the things as president, if he's elected, that he says he's going to do, that would be very, very bad. And there's no indication that he will not do those things. He has every indication of it. And, as you say, Dan, Trump's facing down 91 felony indictments, and Joe Biden's facing down 91 years. and that's a thing, he's closer to 91 than he is to 71. So, okay, that's a real thing. And, but these are decisions that should have and could have been made a year ago. Right.
Did you see?
Make one comment about this. One last thing. When Biden says something, and he says this a lot, I want to finish the job. The presidency of the United States of America is a perpetual position. There is no finishing the job. You didn't start out with a hole that you wanted to dig and then put a post in it, and now you just want to get the post in because all you've done is dig the hole. That's not what a presidency is. The job is, of course, never finished. And so the language that we use where people should just stay until they finish the job. Well, you need a better logic than that, right? Someone's going to be in that role every second of every day as long as this is a country. So the job's never going to be done. It's just going to have a different person in it. And we need to think about this differently, and not, if we're going to have permission structure that says you should run for re-election, it just needs to be based on something other than job completion.
Yeah. And the other thing go ahead.
I was just going to say, did you see Gavin Newsom, governor of California, on one of the Sunday shows talking about how Joe Biden's age is actually an asset?
Oh, I missed that part of it.
Trying to spin that the other way.
Oh, that's wisdom.
Yeah, I wasn't really convinced.
Nice try there. But the other thing to consider with both of these candidates is you're voting for the person, yes, but you're also voting for the team that they will put around themselves. And I feel like with Biden, you're getting competent professionals in all of these areas that are, in his cabinet. With Donald Trump, the argument used to be well, there's going to be adults in the room. He's gotten rid of all the adults in the room. Yes. And so he's just left with these
sneaker wearing sycophants.
Yeah, sneaker wearing sycophants and family members. Like he's trying to put his daughter-in-law in charge of the RNC. These are just people that have no real experience in politics other than being a part of the Trump family. And so when you just look at the people and the teams, it couldn't be a clearer decision. Do you want grown-ups that know what they're doing, or do you want people that are looking for 15 minutes more fame,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
like
terrifying to think.
Out of prison. That's the big move here for him. That's the big cost for Donald Trump, is if he can be elected, then they would pause the state prosecutions while he's president, and then he would pardon himself on the others, and they would start working on the rest of that. And this is a means of trying to keep himself out of jail, which is why he spent $250 or $50 million of people's donations, or $200 million, some crazy amount of money that he spent on his legal defense funds, and partly paying lawyers. It's just
and really paying for really high quality representation too. Could you imagine thinking about what his cabinet might look like in a second term? You just imagine the level of incompetence that is going to make his first term look competent.
Right. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
We might actually be pouring bleach into people's bodies.
Yeah. Well, listen, Yabbits just made a comment where Trump to black voters, I've got great shoes and a terrific mugshot. I think that's a great transition into our next story, which is Donald Trump just coming full on with the racism. He spoke this week to at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee. As a part of that, there was a gathering of black conservatives. I think the Black Conservative Federation or something like that Trump spoke at. When you pan the crowd, much like those wearing blacks for Trump shirts, it was a whole lot of white people showing up there to hear Donald Trump speak to black folks. He said a number of racist things during that, including that people like him, black people like him because of his mugshot. This is a man with a history of racism going all the way back to his time in New York City when he called for the lynching and the death penalty for 5 black men who were falsely accused of a crime. This is a guy who it is deep within his DNA, deep within his psyche and who he is as a person. And it is coming out in some of the most stereotypical and disgusting ways. And we're seeing that with, the sneaker situation, and now, that talks about the mugshot, and, he can relate to black people because he's been arrested. It's just the worst of the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Trump people are pointing to voting patterns in 2020 and polling now that Trump is picking up voters, and did in 2020, in contrast to 2016, pick up more black voters between those, over the course of his presidency. It is shocking. And it's also a reminder that overgeneralizing any group of people is not a good idea, that every group of people needs to be sought after and courted and addressed by politicians and candidates and political parties with the full, robust narrative of them being people who have a lot of conflicting notions and ideas, like all of us. Everyone is that way, every single group. So I hope this becomes a wake-up call to Democrats and the Biden team as well, to not take this stuff for granted, and to not think that there's just whole constituencies they can look through and feel like that one's settled. And I'm not sure that's happening, because Trump will just brazenly say this stuff, and then it causes a bunch of us to talk about it. And he's surrounded by people who just continue to tell him, just say that stuff. It's a really good thing if you do. And look, every president, every candidate wants to take their flaws and make them a positive. Whether it's surrogates talking about Joe Biden's age and taking it straight on, or Joe Biden talking about his age, taking it straight on, saying, yeah, there's some limitations, but there's also some benefits to it. And Trump is like, okay, I've been indicted 91 times. I have 91 indictments in 4 separate cases and 2 other civil cases. I have a mugshot of me. I got to do something with it. And his instinct then is,
sell it.
To be more racist, sell it. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw the speech. I saw what he said about this when he actually said it. And he said, we have these shirts and people are buying them, and was naming different ethnic groups. But the guy lies about this stuff all the time. But the thing he told the truth about, he's like, and they're selling them for like $29. Can you believe that? I mean, people are spending that kind of money on it. Even he's like, it's ridiculous what my supporters will spend money on. It's just none.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways in which Trump is the cause of this. And he's also just playing into a wanting crowd who just wants to give him money for his junk, shoes and shirts and hats and all the rest of it. The 3 of us and lots of other people listening to this have been around a lot of political situations in the last 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. I've rarely seen anybody wearing swag of a candidate. You can't be around Trump supporters without people wearing his stuff. Like, it is so team oriented. It is shocking. And yet, I don't think I sent you this article, Dan, to put up on the screen. From this period of time in 2020, when Trump was the president and then was running for re-election, he has lost 250,000 donors compared to 2020, the people who actually have given him money. So he's been hardcore fundraising for a year and a half now. And when the numbers came in of the amount of donors that he has, down 250,000 donors, which, Rob, gets to your earlier point about Nikki Haley voters and the others who are just saying, like, no, I am absolutely done. So now, will some of those people come back and give him money later and they just don't want to now, or they feel like groceries are too expensive or whatever? Maybe. There could be all sorts of reasons you have for it. But if you're losing 250,000 donors and you're only pulling 60% of those who chose to come out and vote in South Carolina, you are in serious, serious trouble.
Yeah. Did you catch this interview with Trump on Fox News? And the host was like, hey, what would you tell the suburban mom that didn't vote for you in 2020 but is Republican? What would you tell this person to come back to you? And he just goes on this tirade about how the election was stolen. And the Fox News guy interrupts him repeatedly. Is like, Mr. Trump, you lost that election. It was litigated in all these courts. There was courts with judges that you appointed said there was no fraud. It was kind of amazing that Fox News repeatedly, said, like, no, that's not real. That's not reality.
Yeah, wonderful.
But again, it's just Trump's inability. It's a softball question. Hey, what would you tell a voter that's on the fence? And instead of giving them anything, Trump just goes on a completely false tirade about the stolen election.
Yeah, amazing. It is something to watch someone only pander to one group of people, those who already support him. And this is where Nikki Haley, because when Trump came out and sent that text, and I received it because I'm on Trump's, I receive lots of text messages from candidates because I like to follow what they do. And I must be on a few text strings from the Trump campaign. And in New Hampshire, when Nikki Haley came out and said that thing about, like, I'm staying in the race and I'm not dropping out, when Trump said, okay, anybody who's a supporter of Nikki Haley, you're banned from MAGA.
Yeah.
It to say is just madness, right? That he was saying, and then has doubled down on it. And I think Nikki Haley very well could stay in this race, even if the Republicans choose Donald Trump to be the nominee. I could see a Nikki Haley, Liz Cheney ticket that runs on that no labels party or something to give Republicans a chance to vote for the kinds of people they want and not have to feel like they're going to go vote for Biden. So I have no knowledge that that's happening. I haven't heard reporting on it. I certainly don't know anything about it. But if someone's not thinking about that, they should really think about that. Because if Nikki Haley wants to take all the millions that she has raised, and if Liz Cheney wants to take all the millions that she has from her former congressional time that sits in her funds, and they want to spend that on something, what do you guys think about that notion of a Nikki Haley, Liz Cheney combo ticket running under some third-party banner?
That's a real interesting possibility. There's and again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. There's always all this talk about what Cornel West, his candidacy for the presidency, will do to Joe Biden, what Jill Stein will do to Joe Biden, what Dean Phillips is doing to Joe Biden, and what RFK Jr. Is doing to would do to Joe Biden. The reality is that third party candidates, and especially ones that would be kind of viable in that category, are going to be more detrimental to Donald Trump than they are to Joe Biden. RFK Jr. ultimately is going to pull more Trump supporters his direction than he will pull Biden supporters. And the same would be true of Liz Cheney and Nikki Haley running. It is far more harmful to Donald Trump's reelection hopes than they would be Joe Biden's. Especially now that Joe Manchin's decided that he's not going to run for president, thankfully. As much as I've not liked Joe Manchin as a senator from West Virginia, I'm not going to like Jim Justice a whole lot more. But I would have been very upset with Joe Manchin if he had decided to run for president. But the people that are actually much more harmful to Donald Trump's reelection efforts than Joe Biden's. It's once again, it's like the narrative that's out there and the hand-wringing that's out there, and then you compare it with what the reality is. It's just so different.
And I know that someone has in the chat, and I think they're right, that Liz Cheney's fear is that if she runs as a candidate, then that would keep somebody from voting for Biden. People are smart on this, and they're obviously going to do polling and all, and run the numbers and say, okay, of people who don't want to vote for Trump, will they just not do it, even if there's not an alternative? And some percentage of those people will trickle over to Biden. And if you give them a viable conservative third party to vote for, then those same people won't vote for Trump, but now won't vote for Biden. So Biden would lose a vote, and Trump only loses the same number of votes because these are people who aren't going to vote for him anyway. So someone would have to make a calculation and a determination. Are there more people who would vote for Trump if they didn't have a viable third party to rally around than those who wouldn't vote for Trump if there was just nobody viable? But I think you could put, I think some conservatives, and look, I don't want conservatives to be in political power right now. I think they've lost the ability to do so. You could make an argument, though, that there's a whole lot more people that are looking for an alternative, that if they can vote for the No Labels Party or some other group like this, that fills the itch or fills the void that they experience by not being able to vote for a Republican anymore. And leaving it blank for a lot of people or voting for Biden is just something that feels worse than having an alternative that they could vote for. So anyway, I think you could get a big national push and have the Liz Cheneys and Nikki Haley's of the world going into 10 or 11 states and making a hard pitch for every Republican to vote for them. And I think you can make the argument that Trump would lose more significantly. But obviously there's people doing polling and all this, and they'll, someone will determine that. But I could see that. I could see that working. And I think it's worth trying, at least. Yeah,
exactly.
Hey, Biden today had a chance to go on television and talk with Seth Meyers, which again, I mean, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that if Joe Biden is the nominee, I'm going to support him. So maybe I sound like Mitch McConnell saying I'm going to, I think Donald Trump is the worst thing in the world. He bears responsibility and should be criminally charged. And if he's a candidate, I will certainly support him. I don't want to Mitch McConnell myself into a hole here, but I mean, I'm all for Biden if he's the candidate. So he went on Seth Meyers' show, who has a late night TV show that I think is on late night after late night. So I don't know who watches that anymore. Probably people of a younger demographic. And was chit-chatting there with old Seth Meyers. And then they went down into the lower end of the street level of the building where they record this in New York and got ice cream.
Yeah, got ice cream. Nice little ice cream time to talk about Gaza and what Biden is going to do. Just the juxtaposition here is like, let's talk about the mass slaughter that's happening on our watch with our funding of weapons, and let's have a little ice cream. Yeah.
Now it went the other way, as it turns out. They were just getting ice cream, and the press gaggle around someone shouted a question. But it didn't feel that way. And this is the kind of thing that campaigns have to be thinking about. Like, hey, what's it going to look like if when a president who, by the way, has chosen, and a campaign has said this is a chosen tactic, to not be available for press interviews. Like apparently, compared to Obama, who did 400 or 500 by this point in his first term, press interviews, and Trump, who had done 300, Biden has done less than 100. And they've been even more curated. So people feel an itch to get to him. To not do a little press gaggle out and then say, okay, now we're going in for ice cream and we're just going to hold the questions. They didn't manage that. And then Biden didn't manage not responding to the question. So he made news by responding to the question from a reporter about a very serious question. Can there be a ceasefire to stop the slaughter of innocent people in Gaza and by Israel? And what's the U.S. position on it? A question that should be raised to Biden every day until something happens. And while he has an ice cream cone in his hand, he chooses to answer that question.
Yeah. He answers that question with an ice cream cone in his hand, standing next to a comedian. It's just, the optics are not great.
Come on.
And you can almost see it in Seth Meyers' face, like, oh boy, this sucks.
What you doing, buddy? What you doing, Joey? Yeah. And let's also not, these are grown men getting ice cream in the middle of the day.
Oh, seriously, in suits.
Pull back on the question altogether. What are they doing getting ice cream in the middle of the day? Let me just ask the two of you. Have you had any ice cream in the middle of the day recently? Anybody in the chat? Did you stop during your work day and get a cone? No. Who does this? So my point being, I don't think Seth and Joe are typically out grabbing ice cream. Why did they grab ice cream? For the optics, for the pictures, for the everyman nature of it. So they know what they're doing. They want a photo op of just a couple of regular guys grabbing a cone. Which is never a good look. You have cameras on you all the time, and you want to be licking and biting ice cream that you have on an edible container in your hand. Ice cream cones, first off, just ridiculous. So it's all set up to be like, Americana look. They know that's the scene. and say, this is a very important question. We're working hard on it. We like to talk to it. We like to talk to it after we're done with our confection. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Doug, what's your go-to ice cream? What's your go-to ice cream?
Well, back when I was an ultra runner, after long runs, I would have Chunky Monkey, which I mean, sort of a pint Chunky Monkey from
Ben and Jerry's.
What's it called? Ben and Jerry's, yeah. Yeah, that's that one I like. But okay, so to be truthful, I don't feel good after I eat ice cream. So I don't know if I'm lactose intolerant or just sugar or whatever. So I would rarely ever. Even when we even go as a family to get ice cream, I say, nah, I don't need any.
Yeah,
terrible.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. What about you? What's your go-to?
Dan,
Vanilla?
Dan, you gotta. No, I'm not Joe Biden. Dan, you gotta go to ice cream.
Strawberry cheesecake of some variety. Yeah, yeah. But ice cream optics aside, this is good news for people who have wanted Biden to do something about Gaza. He's saying he's hoping for a ceasefire by next Monday. I don't know why it takes this long for him to say, hey, maybe we should stop murdering civilians. And this whole thing where he's like, wow, they're really being difficult to work with. Yeah, you're the president of the United States, though. You've got some weight to throw around here. Like, don't act like, oh, this is a real tough one. You just tell them, we're not going to fund the mass slaughter of innocents anymore. Like, it's not that hard. I know there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to, whatever. But, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And do we really have the moral high ground to be like, oh no, you shouldn't
no, absolutely
not. Impose on another country like, hey, listen, we don't want you to mass slaughter anybody.
Hey, we know you're copying our exact playbook from any number of wars and invasions, but you do as we say, not as we do.
Yeah. But it looks like
Biden has been out on this, and he has said for the last 3 months that what Israel is doing is wrong and intolerable and has to change and all the rest of it. But I know that people disagree about this, and they may be more right than I am. But the United States is not the same as Israel. And when people say what Israel is doing is what the United States is doing, and Israel will do nothing the United States doesn't give them permission to do, that is not true with Netanyahu and the Biden administration. It is not true. And Biden just cannot come out and say the thing that I want him to say and that Dan, you articulated so well there, because that's a congressional decision about the funding of other countries. So he doesn't have and if he says something he doesn't have the ability to enforce, it weakens the hand of the United States and the presidency. So this is why this stuff is so complicated. And we have these relationships and the willingness to give money to certain states to help them survive and to advocate for ideas we think are important. We do that all over the world in many different ways. And that doesn't mean that Israel simply does what the Biden administration or Congress in the United States wants to do. So they're trying to figure out how to put enough pressure. And it was interesting to hear Biden's actual comments about this. He misspoke and then corrected himself because he said, by the beginning of the weekend, I mean, by the end of the weekend, he said. So he started and he said, by the beginning of the weekend, they said, by the end of the weekend, I think we'll have a ceasefire. My team is telling me that by Monday, this can be in place. So they know precisely how they're working this thing over the next 160 hours to make something happen, to get it to a Monday ceasefire. So that's all happening and working. And if that's the kind of story he could have out, and somebody says in the chat, he likes ice cream, who cares? This is why it's a problem. Because instead of taking it seriously, that Biden steps out and says in a Rose Garden interview or somewhere else, I just want to update people on where we are. This really matters to us, and we're working all the levers of power that we have. He takes it as an offhand comment while he has a single scoop of vanilla in his hand. And it makes it feel like it's off the cuff, like you're saying, Dan. Like he's just kind of randomly responding to these things, where what he actually said was, we have a team working very deliberately with a very specific timeline that we think will happen not by Saturday, but by Monday. So they're really deeply involved in this, but it makes it feel like they're not really deeply involved in this.
Right.
Because as the spokesperson, he's got an ice cream cone in his hand when he chooses to answer this question. That's why this kind of stuff rattles people.
Mm-hmm.
Or people are like, I like strawberry and chocolate. Who gets vanilla? I mean, if you're going to go for a sugar hit and you're going to go for cream, what are you doing with just standard vanilla?
Yeah, that could be a praline or even a butter pecan.
No, he's a vanilla guy. He's a vanilla guy. Joe Biden. Yeah, I mean, could there be a ice cream more associated with an age group than butter pecan? But that being said,
did your fathers also or grandfathers also eat butter pecan? It is just
exclusively.
And I'll tell you, Rob, as soon as you have your tooth removed, you've reached the age now where your spots aren't a problem, but now you're going to have your teeth pulled. It's time for you to start thinking about butter pecan more often than you did in the past, because you're clearly reaching the level at which the younger children need the elderly toothless people in their lives to start enjoying some butter pecan.
Yeah. But I mean, it feels perfect that Joe Biden would be a butter pecan ice cream eater, but he's not. He eats vanilla. I, on the other hand, am with Alex. Nothing wrong with some mint chocolate chip. And, what Israel is doing is against the international humanitarian law. If we're going to merge these two things, I like mint chocolate chip, and this is war crime.
That's an amazing comment, all in one.
Yeah. It's vanilla and ceasefire and mint chocolate chip and international violation of human rights. But I don't think there's any other way to describe this, and the wrong-headedness of the nation of Israel government is on full display at this point. And sometimes something that is such a well-laid plan just tips over and falls apart. And for all the people who have said we should stop spending government money on going to the moon, let's give this to the private sector. Congratulations, you did. You sent a private moon landing mission, and it's the headline says, it's on the screen. You have to be cut short because the spacecraft tipped over.
Sad trombone.
Sad trombone. The still till this day, I mean, let alone 1968, the ability to thrust a big piece of metal from Earth and land it on the spot on the moon that you intended is an incredible that we should not look past. Just really quite amazing.
Yeah, I mean, near implausible, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, so, as some of you, Rob, I know, have thought about it considerably, that it is really, really hard to believe that it actually happened.
We don't need any more conspiracy strikes on this show.
Yeah, sometimes we get in trouble when we talk about this stuff. And I don't know why moon landing would be one they would take a strike at. But when I was a kid, we had these things called moon boots. I don't know if they had them when you guys were kids. Did you have moon boots?
Yeah.
The kids would wear.
Yeah. Yep. So did Napoleon Dynamite. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Did you you put bread bags in your moon boots?
The reason the moon boots were thick on the bottom and called moon boots was because the astronauts had very thick boots. Do you remember this whole thing from your conspiracy?
Yes, because they thought there would be inches of dust.
There had to be inches of dust because of the things we believed about science. And they got there, and there's no dust on the moon. There was no need for the moon boots.
Yeah. Did you wear your moon boots with spacecraft? Did you wear your moon boots with bread bags so your feet wouldn't get wet?
Yeah, you got to keep those toes dry.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't. Well, I didn't get, honestly, now I'm remembering it. I didn't get to have moon boots. They were expensive when I was a kid, and I didn't get to have them. I'm just now remembering that. So no, I never had. I had other ones like galoshes, like rubber things over my other shoes, like an old man.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't. Were moon boots a good boot? They feel like they were early Uggs. The
They
Uggs
were.
brand.
I feel like they were. I mean, the ones I had were always cheap because we were also not wealthy, but apparently wealthy enough for me to have moon boots.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
cheap ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they would get holes in them, and you'd have to
Watch.
put your
Probably say, "Oh,
bread back.
had moon." I don't know. You had to put bread bags over your. I remember doing that with other shoes. What an odd thing, right?
Yeah.
Because the shoe or boot is not going to keep your foot dry, so you just preemptively.
Amazing.
Yeah.
They make an entire boot and can't keep it as dry as a bread bag would keep your foot dry. Build that on in there while you're making the boot. That's a real.
Seriously.
That's real.
Yeah, and maybe these folks is this Intuitive Machines is the private company that wasted a lot of money on some kind of lunar spacecraft. Maybe they should have thought about, how to keep their machine upright. Just tipped over. What causes it to tip over?
Like, did it start out upright, or did it just land wrong, never got up
Is there
to
wind
begin
on
with?
the moon?
There is not.
That's why the flag that they
tip
have
over
had to be structured to look like it was
exactly.
flying.
What would cause it to tip over? What would be
Maybe
the thing that would?
Maybe the foot came down and got one of those little craters. Maybe like a little tripod. When you have a tripod tip over, yeah. Or we could have read the article. I guess that would have been helpful. Probably would have told it.
But look, the moral of the story is it's harder than it looks to land on the moon, and turns out NASA knew what it was doing.
Yeah. And then there's the photo that's here on the live stream version. So if you want to go look at it, or you could just Google this story yourself. But there's a little sub caption to the photo, and it says an arrow pointing to the Intuitive Machines Nova C lander. It's the name of it. And then in the screen, kind of in the middle, there's a teeny little white arrow that's pointing at the moon lander. So something is taking this photo from way high, maybe a satellite or something. So then it says the lander on the moon service on February 24th. And then photo credit. And this is what I just love about it. Then photo credit, NASA, Goddard, Arizona State University. NASA and Goddard, the space laboratory, and Arizona State University are all like, yeah, privately funded spacecraft tipped over. We have a picture of photo credit, public funding for space work. Like just a little troll right there, a little sub troll in the and the fact that NASA is going to make sure they're getting photo credit. They're not letting anybody take their photo credits of the moon. It's NASA's photos if it's of the moon.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I mean, really stunning photograph too. Like, really shows you exactly what's going on with the tipped over spacecraft.
Robb's sarcasm for those.
Is there no zoom? NASA, do you have no zoom on your camera?
Yeah, we're looking at. There's a lot of circular shadows on this picture, but the one we're looking at with the tiny arrow is more of a rectangle, and so that's how you know it's
yeah. And it's really small. This must be a very small spacecraft compared to the size of the moon. Well, hey, speaking of moon, on April 8th, the moon's going to be in the way of the sun if you're in certain parts of the world, including in the United States. And it's a solar eclipse that people who care about this kind of thing are so excited for, because it's going to have a path of what's called totality, where the entire sun will be blotted out by the moon. And when that happens, people who have experienced and seen these things talk about it as a life transformative visual experience. That Paul Wallace, astrophysicist and regular on the podcast, the one who will be joining us in our experience I'm going to tell you about in a moment, has said that as a grown man, he wept for minutes when he saw one. And this is the second one, the last one he'll have a chance to see in his life in this style, I guess. So he's going to be there. It is an amazing thing that many, many people don't know about at all, or are just now hearing about. And other people have been arranging their lives for a decade to go see this thing. So you can Google the path of totality. It kind of comes through Texas and then goes through, I think, Arkansas too, and then all the way up to the East Coast. But the whole country is not in totality, and it's the swath is fairly narrow. But we're going to be hosting a group to experience this out in Eagle Pass, Texas, which is on the western border of Texas and Mexico, looking over the Rio Grande River and experiencing this thing together. So if you want to join us for that, drive your way out or fly into San Antonio, and we'll pick you up and get you out there. There's all the information on our website about this, and then that rolls into a border experience where we will then spend some time for those who want to stay around for another 3 days and experience what's life is like along the border and move Mexico and U.S. sides of the border and all the rest of it. So some things happening that have to do with the moon and politics with your friends at Vote Common Good in April. And then again in April, we'll be doing not a lunar solar eclipse, but a border experience in Arizona. So are we done for the day? An hour?
Yeah, we are. I just want to, if one were to want to, could you put that picture back up, Dan? If one were to want to fake a lunar landing, and you wanted to have some kind of proof that there was a landing, but you're faking it. I think what I would want to do is get a picture of a gray surface with lots of black circles, and then have one little circle that you can't really see what's going on there at all. It's just they're all just black circles. You'd want to point at that black circle and say, "There it is. That's the one. That's us. That's what we did. That's it." It seems like if you were gonna fake something, this would be exactly the kind of picture you would use to fake it.
Yeah.
I think
luckily that this picture is not the only way to determine whether or not an object is on the moon. So
I think if you were going to fake it, Rob, you would have AI, your Chat GPT, create one for you that I just did right now while you were talking, and you would. So I don't think that up there. So if I were going to be like, hey, let's convince people that we did a lunar landing and it was a big fakey, that's what you would have. And you can have
I love how there's
faking a moon landing. You don't do that photo that NASA is pitching.
I love that there's two moons in your picture there, Dan or Doug. There's two moons in your picture. It's fantastic.
Well, you're on the moon, then you can still see the moon. That's fun.
You can see the moon because it was shot in Arizona. That photo, yeah.
Area 51.
Area 51, New Mexico. Hey, all right. Hey, and if you're in the Arizona area, the Southern California area, we will be out there March 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We're going to be in Arizona and Southern California. So go to the Vote Common Good website. You can keep up with us. We're doing training events. We're rolling up on Franklin Graham and trying to do some counter messaging. We're going to be talking to some politicians, a whole lot of stuff going on starting next week. So if the podcast is a little delayed or is coming to you from some secret locations, that's because we're out on the road and on the move. So thanks all for being a part of this and being tolerant when we have to be doing all of this podcasting along with the rest of the work that we're up to. All right, we good?
Yeah, we'll see everybody tomorrow.
All right, let's say hi to people. So Alex, of course, the Squirrely Prepper Lifestyle. Great to see you. Yabbits, Kimberly, Jim maybe was on here. Did I see you? Oh, Mike. Yeah, good to see you. Mike, Tricia, thanks for all your input. I feel like there was a new voice. Kevin, good.
Dodie jumped on for a little bit. Said hi.
Yeah. Loving life. I like loving life. Yeah. The swag. All right, so thanks all for being part of the of this stream with us and for making all this hard work feel a little more homey by being there in the chat. And all right, we'll